So in this video, we're just going to do a couple of quick color sketches. What we want to do is just kind of block the color and try and get the picture finished as fast as possible. So we can just more look at color composition without spending too much time on all the details. So I'm using mostly gouache here, a little bit of acrylics now and then. So what we need to do is get started. So I think what I'm going to do now is just start blocking in here at the bottom, and I'm not too concerned about anything at the moment. I just want to block in some space on the ground. This is just being done on some recycled paper, so it's not even any kind of artist grade paper. It's just a notebook that I'm using here. So we're going to look at maybe that'll be the ground, and here we've got some burnt umber, so we'll just put a bit of that out. And we're going to have a tree. Don't worry about the exact color. Gouache is very forgiving. You can of course go over gouache, it's quite opaque. And so we're kind of going to have this kind of a setup. We'll have a tree over here, and you'll see I'm not paying too much attention to the color. Maybe we'll have the shadow to the right, so there'll be some shadow coming over, and then of course the tree. So to get the tree going, what I'm going to do is take some ultramarine, and then I've got some nice medium yellow, which I'm just going to add over here. And we'll just mix up some green so we can start blocking in some of the trees. So you'll see I'm not too worried about cleaning my brush. The idea behind the exercise is really about speed. So I'm just going to block in the tree. And we'll go with slightly brighter colors on the left. We'll make the sun coming from the left. And so now just to... Right, so we're kind of creating that kind of an effect. So there will be our tree, the light coming from that side. Now what I'm going to do is just mix some of that there, create some really dark patches. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is just kind of work a bit on some of the ground here, add some color, so we'll give it a bit of a green. And you'll see I'm just going with a very flat brush. Could even use a slightly bigger brush. And the whole idea of the exercise is just to block in, so we're not worried about anything really other than blocking in. And you'll see I have a very limited palette, so there I am. Just got a little bush going here, or a little tree. I'm not quite sure what it is, so we're just gonna block that in like that. Right, so we have that over there, and you'll see I'm using the same color that I used in the trees in the foreground here. So we need to bring some shadow there to the right of that tree. So and you'll see this isn't really any particularly good paper. It's actually breaking apart as I'm painting. But that's fine, because the whole idea is to paint quickly, so we don't want to be adding a lot of color all the time. Right, so there we have the beginnings of our road. Now maybe we want to push back in the top. So what we're going to do is take some crimson. I think it'll be this one. And we're just going to mix that up with the blue. So there we have a little blob of that. And clean the brush a bit, not too much. We're going to mix some of that in there. And we just want to create some kind of a purple haze that will then be for the background mountain. So there we have our background coming through there, and so there we have the background hills. Let's add a bit more ultramarine. Right, so great. So we've got some different shades happening here. We'll come back to those fence posts later. Right, and I don't have any gouache white, so I'm going to use this acrylic white, but I don't really want to mix it up on my palette there because it'll get all hard. So I'm just going to use it straight out the tube. It's not the best way to do it, but the purpose of the exercise is speed. So we just want to create some interesting areas here, and we're pushing back. So as you go whiter, you'll see that that pushes the background back even further. So titanium white, it's a good color to create depth. So there we are, pushing back the mountains and creating some interest at the same time. So right, then what we do is we mix it up a bit here again, and we're just going to finish on the dark side, and we mix it in. Right, so we're using a brush stroke. You'll see it just nice and flat from one side of the page to the other, and that's because in the distance we're not expecting too much in terms of discernible shapes, so we're keeping it flat. Now what we're going to do is create that bit of middle ground between the start of the hills. So to do that, we're going to do a bit more ultramarine, and in that case we'll mix it up, but we're also going to use some yellow. So a yellow you might want to consider would be yellow ochre. That's also quite good for a kind of pushing back color. So we mix that in, and now you'll see here we're just going to block in some trees. So not going to be anything too discernible at this stage. So there we go. We're just blocking in. Block, 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 block. And now what we can do is, now that we have a bit of something going here, we can just do a little bit of a highlight there. And let's do a bit more on this side. So just keep working fast. That's the aim here, is to work as fast as possible. Right, so there you can see we have that kind of middle ground done, and what we're going to do now is just go in and add a couple of kind of highlights. For that we're just going to stick with this yellow ochre, and we just want to create the impression that there are some trees in the background. So in order to do that, what we also do then is we give it a very dark, add some very dark base here. Right, paper's a bit wet. Okay, now what we're going to do is maybe just do the highlight on the side of that tree. So to do that, I'm going to take some of this yellow ochre, mix it in with that burnt umber that we added up here, and we're just going to make the tree stump nothing too crazy, and then you'll see, there we go. And then we want to just do a highlight on the left hand side there. So I'm just going to change my brush, and let's go with this thinner brush. And then what I'm also going to do bring in a bit of white. So first a little bit of yellow ochre, and then what I'm going to do is just take some of this white acrylic and put that down, and then back into the yellow ochre. Okay, so I think then inside the tree itself we might want to just add a branch or two. That'll be something, maybe we want to, or create the impression, and we can also just do something like that. Okay, so there we have the tree blocked out. What we might also want to do is just add some highlights here in the foreground. So I'm just going to do it with the white, and then we're just going to add again with that yellow ochre. Right, bring that a bit forward, and then we want to maybe just add some medium yellow again. So I'm going to put that down over here. And that's just going to lighten that up a bit, and maybe some over here. And then what we're going to do is just put a bit of dark there. Okay, so you can see the sun's coming in from the left hand side, and we're just going to slight highlight there. Right, so we can see the sun coming in. Still a bit wet there, but it's fine. Right, so we're going to let that dry a bit. Now what we're going to do is just do some sky. So to do the sky, we're going to work really quickly here now. So we add some of this blue lake. That's what I've got. And now we need a slightly different brush. Okay, we'll go with this brush. It's nice and wide. So and now you'll see we're just going to block in the sky, and you know we're going to add a bit of water here because we want it slightly transparent. It's a light blue sky. So there we go. We don't want to get too heavy. We've got a bit heavy there, one or two places, but we don't really want to get too heavy. So there we go. Right, so as you can see, sky's in place, and then of course we just want to add some interest in the sky. So I'm going to add some white, and I'm doing this with the acrylic paint, so I'm just applying it straight onto the canvas. I don't want to mess up my palette with hard acrylic. And if we wanted to do some clouds, we could also just create the hint of something out there in terms of cloud formation, and you'll see just dabbing it and blending in and all those kinds of things. And then maybe there at the base we're just going to go a bit lighter. That's kind of the, you know, if we were going to do the focal point, it would kind of want to get the eye in there. So there we've done a bit of sky, and now we just want to make things pop a bit. So what I'm going to do is yellow, and now that it's dried here, we're going to do something like that. Bit more yellow ochre, and then I'm going to add some of this white acrylic. and that's just going to make that tree stump pop a bit. And then what we also want to do is just make that the green in the tree pop a bit more here. So there we go, we're just adding a bit of a highlight here. And you'll see we're not blocking in blocks, we're just dabbing the color in random spots, and it's those random spots that will create the impression of foliage, and then adding some dark, and then even so no real order to that, and we just want to make it look like the tree stump goes into the trees. So we'll just bring in some foliage, and then let's just darken that up a bit here. Right, so that's kind of our tree, and then we've got a bit of our landscape. Right, so let's and you'll see now that I've taken the brush straight from doing the tree with a bit of color to, you know, just touching up the landscape a bit, and that'll just add a touch of a highlight color then to the hills in the background. Not a bad thing. And then I'm just going to take some of this yellow ochre. So we just have that feeling that the sun is touching the side of that mountain, and then to create a bit of interest here, we're just gonna do that, make it a bit darker. So that's just the shadow side. So you'll see now that what we've done is we've pulled this piece forward, and that piece has gone right back, so the eye is being nicely directed there. And now what we need to do is just look at this here. So we want to create the impression of trees all the way along this ridge line. So we paint it in, and then we just take the white and we highlight the tops of those trees, and we're just doing it quite random. And in this case I wouldn't normally apply the white directly, but I need to get some gouache white, and then once again a bit of dark, and then right at the end we go really dark at the bottom. Okay, so there we have our trees, or something in the landscape, which looks like a row of something. So it does have some kind of interesting effect there. And then what we can do now, if we want to, is we could we did have those fence poles here, so let's bring them back. And to do that, I'm going to change my brush, and let's take this one. This one should do the trick. So it's something nice and thin, and you'll see I'm mixing up the burnt umber, the crimson and the ultramarine, and now I'm just going to add those poles, Right, so you'll see what that's going to do now is that as we integrate that more into the picture, and what I do when I apply it is I just gently roll the brush. So we're just gently rolling the brush to get all the paint off nicely, and so I think you're getting the idea. So a little bit of water. Right, so there we have our fence, and now what I need to do is just give that a highlight. So the problem with applying the color directly like this is that you're getting the full white and the blend happens on the paper, which is not always ideal because you can't always get the exact color you want, but that's what we got. Right, and then we have that fence post, that one, and then that one down there. Right, and then we're just going to go here with this yellow ochre. Normally I'd mix up yellow ochre and a bit of white there just to make it pop and then apply, but alright. And then of course here in the front. So there we have our poles. So I'm just going to try and catch that yellow ochre before it dries too much with the titanium white acrylic. And then what we need to do is just ground that a bit. A bit of yellow there. So using a fence is a great way to accentuate perspective. And you'll see it's used by a lot of landscape artists. It just helps to draw the eye in. So there we have our fence coming in from the right hand side, and now what we'll want to do for that fence is just add a little bit of a shadow along the ground, as if the so that would be the shadow from the sun. And I'm just going a bit bigger here. So by doing that, we're just adding some light, which then accentuates the dark. So then we carry on there, shadow, and then we bring in some of the light. And then a little bit of white. Also, you'll notice now that as I start to add the dark behind the fence post, you'll also see how the fence posts start coming into tighter focus. So there we have the sun in the foreground, and I'm just going to slope the ground down a bit here, so we get that feeling that the ground is sloping. Right. And then I'm going to go quite dark, as if it's sloping away or out of the sun. And then as I do that, you'll see the effect that it will have on the... So that'll just right, so there we have our fence post running along the side, and then maybe there's some highlight being picked up in the background a little bit further back, and we're not sure what that is, but it's just some interesting background. Right, so there we have the fence, and then if we wanted to add, let's say we wanted to add some of the fence in, so we wanted to show some of the wire, which is also a great trick to help with perspective. Then I'm just going to take some of this white acrylic, and in a nice smooth stroke, doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, we just add the wire to that fence, and it goes kind of behind there, and then it will come off the page. So the other nice thing about doing these quick sketches is it also gives you an idea as to whether, you know, this would be something that you'd like to include in a bigger painting. So you can just check your composition. So don't worry too much about some of the details. So there we have our little landscape with a fence, and if we wanted to make it a bit more interesting in the foreground, what we can do is just pick up some of these colors here, and then just by doing some dabs and then with some dark, then we just create some grasses. So there we've got some grass coming into the foreground there a bit. Yeah, so that's pretty much as far as we're going to take this one. So there's our tree, we've got our fence, we've got a bit of sky, and yeah, we could also just play a bit here with the background if you wanted. So yeah, that's pretty much that. As you know, you can carry on with the painting. This is not a painting, so this was just a quick color sketch, but we've kind of got our composition and what we wanted to achieve. And yeah, now it'll be moving on to the next one. Maybe something a bit different, but we're going to follow the same idea where we work really fast, and it's just a case of blocking in color and creating something interesting. So that's the picture that we did over there, and what I'll do is I'm just going to take that a little bit closer so that you can have a look and see. Right, so that was just a quick exercise then in blocking some color and creating some depth and some perspective. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching.